Okay, I want to address you this morning with the joke that you make. Sometimes jokes are good, sometimes they're bad. Just, Jeremiah called me this morning. I'm on the way here with our guest that you'll meet in a minute. And he goes, not going to be able to make it today. Which would be funny is if at times you actually did not show up.
Right.
So where's the line between a joke and...
Well, also because I have a history of not showing up. So I felt like it was going to play really well. And it did.
It did. The validity, and you sold it.
I was really taking the Tarantino approach because I know Tarantino is a master of tension. And he draws out a scene as long as he can.
And he sets him up.
You've
been setting me up for this for years.
And I wanted to see how you were going to react. I was like, Judith, and you got quiet and you got like, are you serious? I was like,
okay, well, you know why? It's like all your family's in town. You have a lot of things going on. I'm like, damn.
That's why I knew it was going to play well.
Maybe he actually isn't.
That's what I was hoping
to come.
It worked.
It was a good practical joke.
It was a good practical joke.
Some of them too far. That was right. You're right. It was Tarantino.
Yeah, it was Tarantino-esque. It was borderline.
It was good. And you set it up quite well. You're like, I've been doing this. I've been setting this scene up for 2 years now.
So the AZA gonna be like, man, your boy can't even come on the show.
He's like, I flew all the way here from Maryland for this. He can't come from West Hollywood.
For real.
Okay, well, I want to get into it here pretty soon. So I want to know, what are you giving your 5-star review this week? What do you got?
My 5-star review is my skincare line. I use True Botanicals. I just love it. I'm like,
what does it do? Is it a moisturizer? Or
moisturizer, serum, oil. In LA, my face gets so dry. My skin gets so dry because it's such a dry climate. And I love it. It's my favorite. I use it every single day.
Really?
Yeah. And
Is
I've
it
had
a morning
other
or a nighttime
ones.
thing?
Both.
Really?
Both. I do serum, moisturizer morning, and then I do a vitamin C moisturizer at night. And occasionally, depending on how my skin's looking, I'll put some oil on because it's so damn dry out here.
What's the name of it again?
True Botanicals.
True Botanicals, 5-star.
Yeah.
This week for me, especially with all the traveling and everything, the Bose noise canceling 700 headphones are the greatest purchase I think I've ever made.
You prefer them over the Apple?
Light years.
I haven't used them, so I'm going to give them a try.
Light years.
Okay.
It has noise canceling for other people in the room. Like, you can be at a coffee shop taking a phone call or on a Zoom, and all of the coffee shop chatter, it blocks all of it out. So the people that you're Zooming with or talking to think you're alone. And then if you're on an airplane and it's like you have them on and you're like watching a movie or something and you go like this, it's like it blocks out all of the noise of the airplane. Absolutely incredible.
You know what
they are the best.
Biggest disappointment is or letdown when you pull up on the plane and you're searching through your bag for your headphones and you realize you just left them in your car or you left them at home.
Let's be real, the Uber. I've lost 4 pairs.
Yeah, man. AirPods, they're making a killing off of people just losing them.
It's crazy. But yeah, the Bose noise canceling 700s, hands down the best ones I've ever had. I can't fly without them. I would give it 6 stars if I could.
Okay.
But it's a 5-star review, so I'm giving it the 5.
All right.
So our guest this week is pretty rad. What's the playlist? What's the song that's going on the...
Yeah, I've been thinking a lot about this. What energy...
More energy.
More energy.
More energy.
It's a song that I listen to all the time when I want to just dance to or groove to. And
our guest is pretty groovy. He's got some groove to him.
There is a little extra pressure today on this podcast because our guest went to Berklee School of Music and I want to earn his respect.
So what's the song of the episode?
It's an artist named Teni, Teni, and the song is called No Days Off. Very vibey.
Okay.
Good music, groovy.
I haven't heard it, so I'm going to have
it's
to listen to it.
It's in Afro pop type lane. What's your movie of the week? I'm excited.
Oh, I am excited for this one. The movie of the week is a sleeper for most people.
Okay.
But what people don't know is it's actually one of the movies we really connected on, which is a staple in my family, staple in your family, Heavyweights.
Oh, man.
If you have not seen Heavyweights, have you seen Heavyweights?
I have not seen Heavyweights.
It is prime. Ben Stiller.
It is.
Ripped, shredded guy. buys a fat camp and turns it into a weight loss infomercial. It is
it's incredible.
It's like the prequel to Dodgeball. Like
is
same
the prequel to
character
Dodgeball.
as the guy from
Pretty
Dodgeball.
much the same character.
Young dude, shredded.
Tony
but he-
Perkins.
Tony Perkins, Perkisizing. And he gets
Perkisizing.
these little fat, he measures their arms. And
I'm actually surprised how many
hilarious.
people have not seen heavyweights.
I'm
It's a
blown
lot.
away by
It's
it.
a lot of people have not seen heavyweights.
It's absolutely hilarious. And who's the guy that's on SNL that's in it?
I think it's Keenan
Allen.
Keenan Allen.
Yeah, he's one of the little, he's like the mayor of the, right?
Yeah. The
So-
lines from that movie, like, is
Have to check it
incredible.
out.
Yeah.
I'm gonna have to check it out.
Body!
Body. I have them on the body system. The body system. Body.
There's so many great scenes
Yeah.
in it, and Ben Stiller's character is just like, it is so. I sent him a gift the
Come
other
here,
day.
you devil log.
Come here, you devil log. He sent me a photo the other day of his of the fridge at his house, and it's nothing but like deli meats and like bad stuff.
Ooh, look, deli meat.
And at one point, they go through all the fat kids' stuff to like find their snacks that they brought to the camp, and he finds this massive like beef jerky thing and goes, "Ooh, a deli meat."
Ooh, deli
I sent it to him the other day. But yeah, if you have not seen Heavyweights, it is absolutely hilarious. It's like one of the funniest.
It's one of those
comedies.
movies you'll just quote with your friends for like the rest of your life.
It's
Me and my
so
brothers
good.
quote it weekly.
It's so good.
Yeah, it's so good.
Liposuction, option or obsession. Lunch is canceled today due to lack of hustle. Deal with it.
Good morning,
just-
campers.
Yeah, there's so many. Please go watch Heavyweights and then leave a comment and let us know how you liked it.
Do you have any value yet? What do you say? It's like,
Do you have any value? Not yet.
yet.
But by the end of this summer, this camp's going to be filled with skinny winners.
what do you say? Skinny wieners?
You hear that, guys?
Yeah. Oh yeah, I love heavyweights.
It's so good. So
Too good.
that's
Too
the
good.
movie of the week, and
Yeah.
go watch it. Okay, so I am so excited to introduce the guest we have this week.
Can't-
One of the most fascinating people you'll ever meet. He studied biology and jazz at North Carolina Central University. He received his MD from Harvard. He did medical school. His PhD is in neuroscience from MIT. He was an Emerson Scholar at Berklee College of Music, which is one of the top music schools in the world. He's a psychiatrist at Yale University, where he serves as the co-chief research unit. He is currently a professor at Yale and at Howard University. He teaches meditation, yoga. He's a musician. He's an incredible guy. AZA.
Oh, thank you for having me.
Did we get all that right? I feel like
Is that right?
You have a
It
drop the
sounded
mic.
right. It sounded right. It sounded right.
You have like a drop the mic resume.
Yes. Yeah, literally.
It's like drop the mic resume.
Episode over.
Episode over. He's done it
It's
all,
humbling,
folks.
man.
He's lived a million lives.
You've done all of those, and you're
Yeah,
so
man.
young.
Yeah, it's definitely humbling. I've had a lot of, I think, really great opportunities and people supporting me. So yeah, it's been a fast, kind of crazy ride, but I've enjoyed it so far. Yeah.
Do you just have like a hunger for educating yourself across things you're interested in or passionate about?
Yeah, I feel like I grew up definitely in an environment that was very focused on education. And I think not just for education's sake, but just like the more information you have, the more you can make good decisions or just figure out how you want to live.
Yeah.
So at a young age, I was really into just science and trying to figure out like how things work at that like mechanistic level. Being encouraged in that direction and doing well in school kind of put me on that path to following science in that
And
way.
your parents were supportive of that?
Yeah, for sure. And also like music too. That was something I was always doing from a young age too. And they were supportive of both of those things and really giving me space to explore and have structure around that. Yeah.
Did anyone in your family play music?
Yeah, my dad's a multi-instrumentalist
Oh, wow.
and a vocalist. My mom is too. And my family in general just is a very musical family. Like anytime we get together as a family, music is like a part of that ritual.
Like
and
playing it?
playing it, singing it, just, it's just one of the ways that we really, I think, communicated as a family growing up and even like in our extended family. So
Yeah.
it was a very natural form for me to kind of adopt and learn how to express myself and kind of, connect with people, through music. Yeah.
What kind of music did you grow up on?
A very wide range. I would say like gospel music was a real core part of that. My dad's a minister and
I just went to
So-
a gospel concert
Crazy
at
looking.
Staples.
Yeah, the
Kirk
energy-
Franklin, Clark Sisters. It was awesome.
even if you're not Christian or you don't necessarily even believe in the philosophy, the energy of
It
what's
is.
happening is undeniable.
It's undeniable.
You know what I mean? So I grew up in that, and as a church musician and stuff, really just connecting with the energy and trying to understand like what's happening at that deeper spiritual level that is allowing this form to touch people and reach people in that way. But then being able to like study music theory and like actually learn an instrument, you know, start kind of putting things together.
You could not have fun at a gospel event.
Yeah.
The energy is so electric. I grew up on gospel as well. And it's funny, Judah's always like playing like rock songs from late 80s and 90s.
Yeah.
And I've never heard of them.
Yeah.
And Judah's like, how have you not heard? I was like, man, all my dad played was music from the 60s and the 70s, like Earth, Wind, Confunction. Like I grew up on that and gospel music, and that's it. So even 90s hip hop, I missed all of it.
Yeah.
My dad wasn't playing it.
Well, I didn't grow up on like the music that I listen to now. I didn't grow up on, you know, Metallica or Nirvana. That was when I was able to like become my own person. Because I grew up on like DC Talk. You know DC Talk? The first like rap Christian band. I grew up on DC Talk, Creed. I grew up on like Christian rock and roll. That way when I got to my own, I was like, I'm gonna listen to Metallica, Nirvana, Foo Fighter, like, and that kind of was my journey of it, because mine was nothing but worship music. Like, it's funny, it's a thing I send my sisters sometimes to like jog their memory back, and it's our God is an awesome God, and my sisters hear that, and my sisters hear that, and my sisters hear that, and they're like, never again. I don't want to hear that. I don't want to hear that.
But it's like,
that's what I grew up on.
For sure. And like you said, you know, listening to soul, my parents are from Trinidad. I grew up there, like dual citizenship. So I listened to a lot of, you know, calypso, soca, reggae. And there's a lot of common energy between these different art forms that came out of the African diaspora. So hip hop, all those things, I like resonate with me for sure.
My people say, Stone.
Yeah.
JC, are you with me? Oh yeah. Like, bro, that's what I bro.
That's straight out of like the 80s, 90s.
Straight
hip-hop,
90s,
playback.
hip hop,
I've never heard
gospel.
that.
Yeah, it's Kirk Franklin.
I want to hear this. Yeah, how do you hear this and not just want to?
Holy Ghost, holy with I love this song,
how can you hear that?
It's so
how can
good.
you hear that and not be moved
choir,
or like want to move your body? That brings you together to people.
Yeah.
That is connecting not just yourself to the music, but to everyone in your environment.
For sure.
My pops for I think it was like game 6 or game 7 of this year. I think it was Sixers versus the Celtics. He had sent James Harden a song, and it was a gospel song called "You Know My Name." I think it was rooted in like, you know who you are because God's fortified you, so go be that. You know, like go out on the court and go show everybody who you are. And the song is fire. It's like, you know my name. It's so dope, man.
Yeah.
Didn't work.
I love it.
Didn't work.
Didn't work. My dad tried. It was a thought that counted, I guess.
For sure.
Okay, so taking like your passion for music, at what point did you realize you wanted to become like, because you started at North Carolina Central, right?
Yeah.
At what point were you like, I can turn this into something where I can help other people do it and become a doctor and, you know?
Yeah, it was definitely a gradual process. I think going out of college, I was working as a professional musician in like church settings and playing for different artists and things like that, but really didn't view it as a healing form in that context, or really view the overlap of how it could like directly impact what I was doing as a clinician. So it wasn't until really residency where I really saw very clearly that what I was doing in music and what I'd been kind of cultivating as a musician and as an artist was like directly applicable to the people that I was, you know, working with as a psychiatrist, and really starting to work on like music therapeutics. That's kind of when I founded my company and really started to push not just music as an art and like to have a good time, have fun, like bring people together, but also like as a serious therapeutic modality that deserves, you know, research, deserves, you know, kind of building that evidence base.
You went to Harvard and MIT, right? But at that point, you weren't like, I want to use music with neuroscience.
Yeah, no, my PhD was very basic science, like in animal models, recording from neurons and, you know, behavior and stuff like that. And what I was doing as an artist at that time was more like playing covers, again, playing for other artists, playing in church, directing choirs, but there was not really an overlap between what I was doing scientifically or as a clinician, and what I was doing in music.
So you're using music scientifically in a way now,
Yeah, so now
as
it's
a
more
medium for therapy.
So in two ways, I use music as both a probe for understanding how the brain represents information and how the brain might facilitate using music to drive people's connectedness to each other. And then I also think about developing new models for music therapeutics as well. So yeah.
What does that look like for a patient or for someone that you're working with? You're driving different frequencies or different music.
Yeah, it can look in a lot of different ways. So it could look as simply as helping them use music as a way of articulating emotional states, right? So like this week, you're gonna come in with a song that represents how your week went, and we use that as a jumping off point for the therapeutic session. It could also look like we are developing certain soundscapes that have therapeutic value for instance, increasing your focus or your motivation. So that's something that they can access and listen to when they need focus or they need motivation. It also looks like, developing music that can help, with sleep or, mindfulness.
What is the closest understanding you have of why music has such an impact on humans?
I think it's definitely multifactorial. On one level, I think the very kind of physics of music, so like it's sound waves and frequencies, which is on some level the language of the brain. Like the brain speaks in rhythm and oscillations and frequencies. So it's almost like, it directly speaks in the language of the brain in one way. And then I think because of how we evolved and the role of music as a part of our evolutionary process, it's become a part of sort of our communication palette. So ways that we can express and connect with each other. And so we've evolved, like our brains have evolved to, treat music with a certain sort of special interest. Also, like our auditory system comes online before like our visual system. So in the womb, we're already hearing sound and our brains already kind of like, what is this?
What's going on?
Before we can see.
So I've seen that, like people will play music. My sister
classical.
did it. They'll play classical music for the baby before it's born. Is that like scientifically proven to have beneficial elements to it?
In some regards, I mean, even in animal models. So like in chickens, for instance, if you play music while like the egg is hatching and stuff like that, or before the egg hatches, you can see difference in certain molecular markers of neuronal growth, even in like a bird. And there's some evidence for that as well in humans, but it's it's variable. Yeah,
I've
there's
seen
definitely some evidence for that.
I've seen it in other applications. I did a very in-depth tequila tour.
Yeah,
and in some of the distilleries I visited, they would have the tequila in barrels buried like underneath the ground, and they'd be playing music to it. I guess, I don't know, molecularly or the sonics of the music would vibrate the tequila.
I mean, those are living things. Plants are living things, right?
Plants, you said?
Yeah, plants are living.
Yeah,
so
and tequila's derived from agave.
Frequency.
It's pretty wild. They're playing classical music to the tequila, like in the barrels, like blaring. Yeah, it was pretty wild.
So like with certain frequencies, is there certain types of music like within the therapy that, for instance, if someone's feeling really, really sad, can you scientifically prove this music will make you more sad or this frequency will make you happier, or like what's the research look like?
Yeah, it's kind of variable. Some of it depends on sort of person's musical experience, cultural context. But in general, there are certain musical motifs, certain harmonic progressions, certain chord progressions that tend to resonate with someone who's in a sad mood, sad emotion, slower BPMs, things like that. There's been models where you can essentially take someone from where they're feeling and have music that's resonant with that. And by gradually shifting the music to something more upbeat, more major, or having sort of different motifs, you can actually shift their mood. You can certainly shift physiology with certain parameters in the music. And
the physiology changes the mental, right?
It's all connected, right?
Like,
so, if I'm changing your physiology, it can move to a place where it's like not compatible with whatever emotion you were initially feeling, because our emotions are sort of a mix of our interpretation of our internal physiology and then sort of our psychological conceptualization of the context and all those things, you know.
And think about like culturally what music does for different ethnicities and different cultural groups. You know, you look at different communities and how they kind of have a music for their culture.
Well, that's part of, I think, the thought behind how music even evolved is it helps to kind of formalize rituals and bring people into synchrony, both behaviorally, but also at a physiological level, you're bringing people into synchrony. And that probably does something for that group's ability to, you know, connect and achieve or go after common goals, you know. So
interesting.
I've always been curious about oppression in music, because I think when I look at a lot of groups that have been oppressed, you know, there's the music that is derived from that. It's almost in a way of soothing what's actually happening. Even like during slavery, a lot of the humming, I don't want to necessarily gospel was birthed out of that, but you could,
but it was.
Yeah, but it was, right?
Was it?
Yeah, in a way of, you know, providing some relief.
Yeah. I think it's both, right? Like not just gospel, right? Blues, jazz, many of the common forms were birthed out of that exploration really of music. I think both as a way of representing aspects of the human experience that are difficult to put into words, but are more felt. So it both becomes a way of expressing and representing those experiences, and also an exploration of how sharing in this art form can be therapeutic at a collective level, right? And I think that's something that you see coming over in the African diaspora, that way of using music culturally that sort of survived the Middle Passage and survived, you know, the different aspects of integrating into American culture. That is what bursts the blues and jazz and gospel and
that's represented
hip hop
across cultures across the world. Right?
Yeah,
in different ways.
You can see that in different ways.
Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah.
Wow.
So yeah, I think it becomes something really, really powerful, and it's not new, right? Again, I think across many different traditions in human history, we see music being used in ritualistic and therapeutic contexts. I think in Western medicine, we kind of relegate it to an art form that's for entertainment, and we miss some of the deeper spiritual or therapeutic elements of it that I think now we're trying to like just put it within the Western evidence context. Yeah.
So like with the Western like research and everything, are you using more of like the neuroscience background or the psychiatry background? More with the research of how it affects the brain and socially and...
Yeah, no, it's really both. And so I really tried to construct the lab so that we're able to take both perspectives and marry them together. So we're both looking at mechanism, like how does this work in the brain? And again, we're also thinking about things like mindfulness, psychedelics, different things, right? Like how does this work in helping the brain engage in social behavior? But then thinking, okay, now how do we use this to treat mental health symptoms?
So did you do research on psychedelics when you were doing neuroscience, or just when you went into psychiatry?
Yeah, so sort of interest in psychedelics as a therapeutic modality and as a way of driving social connection and social behavior was something that really came about in residency, becoming more aware of the research and kind of the ways in which people are thinking about it being integrated into current psychiatric care, but also kind of revolutionizing, you know, the mental health system to some extent.
Interesting.
Are psychedelics and music interlinked, or are you able to use both of them?
They're very much interlinked in that, like, when you look at both in traditional settings in which psychedelics have been used, there is typically, you know, an ikaro or a song or some kind of ritual that involves rhythm or music as a part of that ceremony. And even within the Western clinical context, during psychedelic dosing sessions, there's, in all the major trials, there's a playlist of music that's played in the background. So I think the idea of music being a part of psychedelic dosing and being a sort of part of that facilitative set and setting is something that's well kind of documented and known. But there's still not much known about sort of the mechanism or the ways in which music really can facilitate, you know, a psychedelic dosing session.
Do you feel like music has been overlooked as a model or tool for therapy?
it hasn't been part of the mainstay, right? So I don't want to say it's been overlooked because there have always been people that have been looking at it and doing that research. For instance, like you can go through psychiatry residency and never talk about music therapy or music therapeutics or ways that as a psychiatrist you can integrate music or any other art, right? I mean, there's evidence for like painting, theater. There's a lot of different ways that art can be used therapeutically.
Right.
And it's not a part of the sort of mainstream education.
Right. The fabric of it in a way.
Yeah.
Do you have like any experiences working with a patient where you were like, oh, I could go like outside the box and use music as a...
There's a lot of cases. So I worked at the VA, for instance, and there were times where listening to music during the session was a way that I was able to connect with the person I was working with in a way that I hadn't been able to connect before. Just the fact that we could we both like this song by Blue Oyster Cult. Oh, I wouldn't have expected that. That now makes a connection where we can now progress through the therapy in a different way because they've been now opened up to a different dimension of who they view me as, as a therapist.
Opening them up.
There's been cases in the emergency room where someone is a musician and I can use that to facilitate them, calming down, avoiding having to get restraints or to get some sort of, anxiolytic, a benzodiazepine or something because I was able to kind of use music to connect with them, in that moment. There are people I've worked with who have hallucinations and music and being able to like have a playlist they can go to when they are in the early parts of that process is a large part of how they prevent like the kind of distress that can happen, when they have those experiences.
Well, we spoke about this last night in the sense that sometimes, I mean, you can dive into more from a scientific standpoint, that hope and that's your brain, right? Like the hope of the music, it inspiring you to have hope that you'll get better and it'll be okay. That's kind of placebo in a sense, right? Because there's no actual medicine that's making them better, but their thoughts and that emotion that from the music does make them better.
In the sort of mainstream clinical context, we really don't honor the power of the mind in the healing process, right? Mm-hmm. We're very much based within a materialistic worldview, which says like a very specific drug or biopharmaceutical has to have a certain interaction with something in the brain or a receptor in the body, and that is how healing happens. I think there are definitely more expansive views that look at things on an energetic level or look at things at the level of the mind and ask like, what's the power of the mind to actually interface and shape the way that the physical structure is changing. And I think the placebo effect is a big sort of evidence that, the power of someone's frame of mind and how that can facilitate or hinder the healing process, right? Obviously, I am an MD, like I'm a PhD, like I believe in biology and all those things, but I also believe there are things that are currently outside of that model that also have real effects.
Yeah, like for instance, like you have people that are depressed or, a lot of different mental illnesses. We live with so many mental illnesses now. And is there at times, because you're an advocate for like meditation and yoga and stuff.
Yeah, for sure.
Like sometimes I feel like, and I'm not a doctor by any means, but you're sad, you're depressed, you're in this rut. Are you ever just like, go outside and do some yoga in the sun? Like you don't need a drug. You need to connect with nature and the sun and moving your body. And like, I feel like a lot of people are sad. Like COVID was really hard for people and people got really depressed. Mm-hmm. They didn't go outside. They didn't interact with other people. They didn't have movement. Is there times where, as a doctor, where you're just like, you need to get outside. You need to go. You don't need a pill to fix anything.
Yeah, I'm very much, especially within psychiatry, I think, medications have a role and can play a very powerful role, especially when people are in crisis or at very sort of extreme ends of like the range of human experience. But I always start with just lifestyle. What time are you going to bed? What time are you waking up? What foods are you eating? When are you exercising? When are you going outside? What are you listening to? What stimuli are you giving to your brain? To me, who are the people around you? Like all of those things are going to have a much more long-term impact on your ability to stay well. Even if you had a crisis and I see you in my emergency room or I see you in my inpatient unit and I get you stable and you haven't taken care of any of those things, I can predict like you will be back within a few months or a few years, right?
And those things are easy to be overlooked.
Those are things that a lot of times we overlook because it's like, well, here's Lexapro or here's Haldol or here's, Seroquel, whatever the thing that you're taking, Abilify. And it's like, do I think that is helpful? I think it can be helpful. Sometimes it can be even needed. But if none of those other things are in place, eventually a lot of people will fall off that that wagon. A lot of Western medicine is symptom management, right? It's not actually about necessarily solving the etiology of the problem or the cause of the problem. It's about how do we manage the symptoms of this problem. Very few things we actually reverse or get rid of. And when we do, it comes with a lot of other kind of harm and side effects to the body. Many of the people that we see like in crisis, it's due to some psychosocial stress most of the time. Like there's some underlying vulnerability.
What does psychosocial mean?
Psychosocial means just something about the way that you are interpreting and responding to your social and environmental situation. So it could be like my girlfriend or boyfriend broke up with me and I lost my job and I'm really stressed out about taking care of my kids, right? Like that could be enough to throw you off, off the wagon, or just any variety of stressors that aren't necessarily like a physical injury or something else. Yeah. I think those things become really important, like how you interpret and deal with the various stressors that come into your life. Like what tools do you have to manage that, and how many of those things are coming at you? How much of that can you balance before like it's overwhelming?
Yeah, I mean, I've had 2 of those 3 things happen to me. Mm-hmm. I don't have kids, but I lost my job, lost the girl I loved, and
you didn't have any tools in your toolbox.
You don't have any tools.
Yeah.
And so you're sitting in this like sadness, and music, funny enough, was a huge outlet for me. Mm-hmm. Being able to lean into that, I think helped me at least, fight through a lot of what I was going through, at different stages of my grief.
What are things that, say for me, I can do on a day-to-day basis that you would say would prevent one of those crises from happening?
How do we build our toolbox?
Yeah, how do I add tools to my toolbox that when something to prevent it, or when it does happen, I'm better prepared to handle it?
It would have been nice to have.
Yeah.
No, that's great.
I had the toolbox, but I had no tools.
Right.
And I've got a few now. I was like, I can do this, but what are things I could do from your standpoint that would help with that?
Yeah. So exercising or having some physical active outlet is a huge, like underappreciated thing that can really help build your resilience. Having healthy relationships where you can be vulnerable and feel safe is important, like having community. Having a creative outlet, something that you feel like you can express yourself that sort of doesn't require another person. It could be a journal, it could be music, it could be painting, it could be, any other form of art. I think having a therapist or a psychiatrist or a coach, whatever floats your boat, but someone who kind of can give you that other perspective and kind of see things from a less subjective, point of view is really helpful. And then I'm a big proponent of mindfulness, an array of, I think, different tools that allow you to have more clarity, have more awareness, and be able to like open up your perspective, which can be really helpful when you start to feel stressed or when you start to feel overwhelmed. Having that ability to create a certain space and a certain perspective can really help you not get into the cycle that your mind normally does when it starts to get overwhelmed or starts to get stressed, which typically isn't helpful.
Me personally in my life, and then some of the people around me with it. And in my mind, when I think about working out, I'm like, that's for your physical health. But it's just as much for your mental health.
Absolutely. It's one of the most powerful antidepressants. Again, this is something you can even see in animals, right? Like in mice, where you'll see increased BDNF, in the hippocampus and the prefrontal cortex. BDNF is a protein that helps nerves grow new synapses and things like that. So yeah, physical exercise is helping your brain recover. It's helping blood flow to your brain and helping your brain be more plastic to deal with different stresses that might be coming. Yeah.
And I'm really glad you said that, because in not my too distant past, when I was going through emotional distress, I had to find the tools. Mm-hmm. And I'm listening to like Huberman podcasts and cold plunging in the morning. Yeah. For me, it was a night and day difference of how I was feeling when I came out of that. Mm-hmm. As I was progressing and, like, say, building this toolbox, I was practicing gratitude every single morning.
That's a big one, yeah.
Just, putting my life in perspective. I started meditation and I was starting breath work. I went to a mindfulness classes here locally in Los Angeles. and it's called the Mindry, and we did a breathwork class. I'd never done a breathwork class in my life.
Yo, it's breath work for a reason.
When I tell you, I didn't know what I was getting into, and we're starting this breathwork, and it's like the way you have to breathe, like exactly, like a double breath out, double breath out, double breath out. All of a sudden, I couldn't feel my hand. Like my fingers went numb, my hands went numb.
I hallucinated.
My feet went numb, and I'm starting pouring sweat. Like I'm sweating, like I'm drenched in sweat. I'm like laying down, I'm drenched in sweat. I like sit up, and I literally just start bawling, crying, like out of control crying. And the teacher came and put both her hands on my back and like just like kind of supporting me.
Yeah.
And then I came out of it, and I felt like a noodle. Like I just felt so loose, and this immense weight lifted off of me. And those are tools or things I'd never experienced before. And you know, the power of the mind and what things we can be proactive on. It was hugely beneficial for me.
So on the flip side of that, like those things we could do, what are a list of things that are kind of toxic that people should like stay away from, if they're like some habits or stuff that you would recommend? Don't do that. Like behaviors to watch out for that could lead you to
anything that you engage in without balance, I think can be harmful, right? Like I think so certain substances, I think, you know, can, for some people, put them in a certain cycle, put them in a certain social group that is harmful for them. I think if that is your case, then you should like be aware of how that substance is affecting and you know, your ability to have a functional life or the kind of life that you want. So I think that can be a range of things.
Are there tools that you use daily?
I meditate daily.
Meditate daily.
I would say like 98% of days I meditate.
What does that
at least 5 minutes.
What does that look like? Is it just complete stillness?
That's a great question. There's at least 5 minutes of complete stillness.
And trying to keep your thoughts from wandering and just be...
Yeah, like is it transcendental meditation, or is there a particular type of meditation you use?
A lot of my early training was in Vipassana meditation. So that I think informs a lot of my practice, but I think it's a mix of focused awareness, which is focused on the breath or focused on different elements of your body, either the physical body or the energetic body, and then open awareness, which is kind of observing whatever thoughts or feelings are coming into the space and allowing them to pass.
Letting them pass.
Yeah.
Because they do come, right? And then
they do come, and they do pass, as with, you know, everything. I also have a yoga practice, so that becomes much more about, again, the breath or observing how energy is moving through the body in different postures. But that's sort of, I think, a part of like my daily toolkit for sure.
I'm a big yogi. Like I love hot yoga. You know, I'm big. I'm 6'4". The heat helps my body get a little loosened up. And I want to dive into that a little further. But I think when I meditate, I don't know if I'm doing it right.
Yeah.
And I want to know from you. I basically I do a 10-minute meditation practice, and for the first 5 minutes or so, I tell myself I'm not the body, I'm not the mind. I don't really know why I'm saying it. I just been like, all the research I've said is like,
well, it's true. So that's one good reason to say it. Yeah.
And I'm trying to find a place beyond that, I guess, you know, in terms of my meditation. What is I'm not the body, I'm not the mind? Can you help explain what am I actually telling myself?
We all have a concept of self that is, part of it is the way that the consciousness evolves as we grow and we begin to discover that we're in a body and that we can control the body. And as a part of that developmental process, we're typically taught like the body is you, like you are your body. But we can also look to know like, okay, the body you have now is not the same body you had at 5. It's a very different, almost pretty much completely different body from its actual cellular biological construct. It's a different body. But yet your feeling of self is consistent over that time that the body has changed. Right. So just from that, even if you just thought of it from a logical standpoint and not experientially, you and your idea of you as a consistent thing that exists through time can't be your body because your body has changed completely over time. So that's one step.
Okay.
Once one has gotten to that step, there's still often a tendency to automatically link our identity to the things that we think. So if I think something, I automatically accept that as me thinking that. And I think this idea of I'm not the mind is saying, well, there's another layer at which I can start to observe my thoughts and my mind. And I can see that, well, my thoughts are always changing and the state of my mind is always changing as well. Yet who I am at the core is this consistent experience, this consistent awareness of all these different things that are happening. So I can't be my mind because my mind is also something that is not stable. It's something that's always shifting and changing. Again, the mind you have now is not the same mind you had when you were 6 or 7. But there's this idea that there is a core component of myself that is real and is substantial and exists throughout time. Whatever that is, it can't be the body and it can't be the mind.
And you're able to use meditation in yoga as a form of therapy?
It can be a form of therapy, and it does have like inherent sort of therapeutic value. And this idea about like the body and the mind and who you are in relation to them, I think can be clarified through a meditative practice or through a yoga practice. And with that, I think already comes a certain amount of space and a certain amount of perspective that shifts how you go through your experiences and shifts how you engage with your life.
So what would you say like some of the biggest obstacles you face as a doctor trying to help other people dealing with, I mean, we probably deal with more mental health now than we ever have in the history of our world.
Wow.
So what are like the biggest challenges for you with your research and taking Eastern and Western medicine together? What's like some of the biggest challenges you're facing or you think that you'll face?
We have a very subpar healthcare system when it comes to mental health. I think we are good at the healthcare system at very sort of high risk, high reward, procedures and things like that. When it comes to preventative health, when it comes to the collective mental wellness, like we don't have a system that actually like facilitates that. And so I think a lot of times as a psychiatrist, especially working within like the emergency room or crisis centers like I do, you're working kind of within a system that's suboptimal for what you really would like to do with someone.
How does your research or not affected your faith that you grew up in? Like, have you been drawn to different conclusions?
Oh, wow. Yeah, that's a great question. I've been through, I think, a lot of phases in that, like, obviously I grew up in a fundamental like Christian tradition. And so I had, I think, a lot of exposure to spiritual experiences. Again, a lot of it was really integrated through my work as a musician within those contexts developmentally. Yeah. When I got to college, like I was majoring in biology and had minors in jazz studies and philosophy. And there were a lot of things I was taking, like philosophy of religion, ethics, epistemology. And so I went through a period where I was like more agnostic, more atheist.
Me too.
And then I would say towards medical school and graduate school, kind of started to come back to a spiritual foundation, but with, I think, much more widened lens. And then definitely through residency, started to kind of build really my own spiritual practice that like resonated with me and allowed me actually to grasp more of the truth about the things that I was taught as a child, and also to see places where I don't resonate. Yeah.
That's interesting because I feel like maybe me and you had similar upbringings, at least in terms of faith. Mm-hmm. I grew up in a Baptist household. I went to church school up until 7th, 8th grade. And I was very close in majoring at Georgetown in theology. And it pushed me out of religion. I think it got me questioning, and I think rightfully so. I think you need to question and look at things. Yeah. And I think it pushed me out of religion for a long time. And I was on my own, self-discovery journey, kind of questioning my faith, asking questions I'd never asked before. And I think similar to what you said, I was able to come back to it and answer questions and find the truth in things. And it's super empowering.
I think religion that has still within it like the true seeds of spirituality can be very, impactful and life-changing in a positive way. But religion that doesn't have that anymore can be really, really harmful. And I mean, we've seen just a lot of evidence of that in human history. So.
And I was able to be drawn back into it through listening to gospel music again. you know, and it was almost like a baseline for me.
Which kind of leads me to, you are the director of Center of Healing, right, at Howard?
Center for Collective Healing, yeah.
So what does that look like, and what are you trying to, I mean, collective healing is in a big group, right? So like, what are you really focusing on there to make impact?
Yeah, so there we're really looking to see how can we evolve group treatment and community-based forms of treatment, and looking at, you know, psychedelics as a part of that, multimodal languages, which are things like music, art, you know, theater, dance, and how we can construct that towards solving challenges within like social bias and social stress, working with couples and families, working on climate action and nature relatedness. And so those are kind of like the big areas that we're focused on, looking at how group-based forms of treatment can be used to make progress on you know, those challenges and other sort of coordination challenges.
And like, what kind of communities are you targeting when you're trying to like do the research, and which ones have you found that like need a lot of, suffer with more mental health than others?
We're looking at different, you know, in different spaces. We're really interested in working with incarcerated and formerly incarcerated individuals. We're looking to work with different groups that are polarized, you know, so looking to work with like politicians. I can't say as much about the details yet.
I know,
because you know, we're in like the pilot phase and in some early conversations, but some really exciting, again, polarized groups that we're working with. Yeah,
that's so fascinating.
I want to touch more on what you do with music. Because, and I'd love to get your thoughts on modern day music now and the effect it's having on younger generations. You know, our age group. Started really getting into rap in high school, into college, and I know it's an outlet for the Black community. I know it's initially based out of oppression. What effect do you feel rap music is having now? Because in so many ways, it's what is based on it is also glorifying things that I want to think is like also stunting progress.
I think when you look at sort of the evolution of hip hop and like how it comes out of jazz, and like, again, you can kind of trace the lineage through sort of slavery, how the music has evolved, and then you see hip hop in its genesis. Then you see kind of after it becomes commercialized and the ways in which the messaging shifts and what is kind of glorified shifts. The energy within hip hop music has always been infectious and very influential. I think the messaging right now can be really harmful. Like, I think there's a lot of messaging that is not uplifting, just to put it that way, right? It doesn't really encourage a higher level of thought. And I think there is always, and it has always been, a role just for fun and for music that just makes you feel good. And I'm also aware that there's something about music that allows you to take in certain messaging that you would otherwise, you know, reject. Like, I've found myself singing songs or singing lyrics that I would not really actually support that.
100%.
Right? But
100%.
it comes with a very infectious beat and a very infectious energy and delivery, and we vibe with that and resonate with that, right? So, you know, I also realize that there's always an element of the music that is contrarian or like pushes against sort of the norms, and that's also an important part of art. So I don't want to, like, you know, kind of shit on or downplay what people are doing, but I think there's definitely a role for bringing back certain messages that help people to kind of be collective and moving in a more uplifting direction, because many of the things that we glorify are the same things that are harming us, you know. So I do think that is a real phenomenon that exists. I think it's part of what the music industry understands and capitalizes on, to be frank.
Because I get what it exactly capitalizes on. Because I get what it's doing for us. You're able to monetize, you're able to make money, you're able to provide a living, help your family, et cetera, et cetera. But like, what is it doing to us? You know, and that's maybe the deeper question.
And I don't know the cost benefit in terms of who is it doing it for and who is it doing it to, and what's the weight, you know, how many people is it doing it for versus how many people is it doing it to, and what are the offsets of those benefits and costs. I think it's something that as a collective we should have those conversations. And
what do you think about with like the new Gen Z and even maybe some millennials, like attention span? Songs are getting shorter. They want it quicker and I feel like the substance is going away as well as the length of the art. They're doing it strictly for numbers and for business. Like not for art's sake, not for creating something good.
One, there is a desire, not even just in the younger generation, but we want information faster. We want it packaged shorter. We want to spend less mental energy to get whatever we need to get, you know? And that's just the way the technology is continuing to develop. So I don't see it necessarily slowing down. But it does mean that I think if one wants to steer away from that, like the art has to be at a certain level of excellence where it's like, I can't deny this. Like I'm going to listen to this 5-minute song because it's that good. I think that's definitely challenging. So I do think there's in general a shorter attention span and a desire to get things in a more packaged way, when the attention span was longer, or the expectations because of technology, you know, was different.
Yeah, it's like the Veruca Salt and Willy Wonka. It's like, I want it now.
Yeah.
We're thinking about our parents when they had, you know
I want it now.
I want a potty. I want it. It's like now, and that's the generation we're living in.
Where's that from?
I want a room full of laughter, 10,000 tons of ice cream. And if I don't get the things I am after, I'm going to scream. And that's how it is.
Yeah.
But like our parents, they would, my dad said, and I want to do this, but maybe we can do it with each other. Get a Led Zeppelin album, and they would they'd put it on, and they would lay there and listen to the whole thing, because they're made to listen to the whole thing. For instance, Led Zeppelin, or like a lot of these old like they're 7-minute songs, and the albums are an hour, and they'd play them, and they would all just sit around on couches and listen to the whole thing. Granted, they probably smoked a lot of weed and didn't want to move, but that's awesome. They listened to the whole thing, and now we're kind of away from albums. We're playlists for life, where I want to listen to this and to that and to this and to that.
And I think even the music, like how the music is being produced and created, right? It's a lot different. When you were recording a project in the 60s or 70s where you got to get the band together, you have to do your takes differently. It was just like a lot different process than now. I can basically have something ready to go in 5 minutes. I can master it, you know, online, and all these things which like even in my next project, like I'm working with like live instrumentation as the core and then producing around it, trying to just get back to more of the musicianship and just taking time with the art form and hoping that like resonates with people, whether or not it's like what they're used to getting or used to hearing.
You know, I have a question for you. Of all the things you have to your name, all the accomplishments that you have done and are doing, what would be the most fulfilling accomplishment, or something you want people to know you by when it's all said and done? Colleagues, friends, family.
I hope people say I'm a family guy, right? Like when it comes to being there for my family, spending time with my kids, my wife, my parents, you know, niece, nephews,
so
sisters.
not life's work, not.
No, for me, like I would want that to be, people were like, oh yeah, he always was like not coming to things because he had to do something with his kids, or he was always like not doing this thing because of his family, right? Yeah. And that being like what is important. Like I think I'm doing a lot of really great things that I'm hoping will have a lot of impact. And at the same time, like if I'm able to accomplish all those things but didn't have impact or wasn't meaningful to like the people that are closest to me that I love, that is not my idea of success. And so
I love that.
That's kind of how I'm approaching things. And I think that has been a shift that has also occurred with age and experience. But that's kind of like where I would like to be known and remembered for, in addition to like hopefully other cool things that
might be my favorite answer.
It's incredible.
That's going to be a hard answer to top.
Because
I love that.
Because basically you're saying, I want to go help these people, but the most important people are right here. And if they're good, then, you know, you've done your job, which I absolutely love.
Well, I feel like, you know, I have family members. I have a sister, I have a brother, they have kids. And I think my sister especially, I see how important her family is, how important her kids are to her, and how she raises them. And like, it inspires me. I don't have any kids yet, you know, but it just makes me want to be a great parent.
Yeah, all the titles that you have, doctor, physician, whatever. So like father and husband are your favorites.
Yeah, because I think it's like that's where the real self-exploration and growth, and I think that's where a lot of that is really measured, right? Like with the people who really get to see you intimately and and rely on you in a certain way, or you have a certain responsibility for, I think those are the spaces where you really get to see reflections of who you are, and that can be challenging, and that also is like where you can, I think, grow in certain ways. And I think if you can take care of that, then you're much better positioned to go out into the world and take care of that, you know.
Is there a better compliment than your peers or your friends saying that man loved his family?
No.
That's such a beautiful compliment.
I can't think of anything else that would be like, that is the definition of success, in my opinion. It's not all the other stuff. Well, dude, thank you so much.
No,
dude.
thank y'all for having me.
So much
For having me, man. This was fun.
Thank you guys all for watching. Click the link to subscribe to our newsletter. That's where you can get the full menu and see our 5-star products, as well as the playlist and all the other stuff we have. So, and it's the only way to watch the full episode. Speaking of 5-star, it'd be great if you could leave us a 5-star review and post and share. Thanks, guys. Dude, thank you so much.
No, thank you, man. That
Holy
was
cow.
fun. That was fun.
That was the best answer.
Do we
I've
ask
ever
like
heard.
I know you